Welcome to Media Mystics, a podcast encouraging encounters with Christ through film, music, poetry, video games, and all mediums of inspiring art. Today we're honored to have our guest, Sister Allison from the Daughters of St. Paul with us to discuss the video game What Remains of Edith Finch. You can see the timestamps in the description below to jump directly to the topic that you need. And while we discuss these works of art from a Catholic perspective, the views in this podcast are our own and not official perspectives of the Catholic Church. We do not endorse every message of these works. Personal discernment is advised. Join us as we seek to become Media Mystics. Sister Allison, welcome. For everybody that's tuning in to the podcast today, this is really our first encounter with Sister Allison, other than your wonderful blog post that you posted on What Remains of Edith Finch, which was something that I had read when I was first playing What Remains of Edith Finch. So I'm really excited to just get to know you and get to be able to meet you on the podcast. So Sister Allison, if you can, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Who's Sister Allison, and how did you become to be a religious sister? And for those that don't know anything about the Daughters of St. Paul, who are the Daughters of St. Paul?
Yeah, so the Daughters of St. Paul were colloquially known as the media nuns. So our mission is really to evangelize using all forms of communication, especially those most modern and effective. And so when we were founded 100 years ago, that mostly meant book publishing, newspapers, magazines. That was kind of the only thing that existed at that time. But as different media were invented, radio, television, the internet, we have also adopted those means to spread the gospel. And so we still do a lot with traditional publishing. I'm actually one of our authors. I write books for kids and teens. I just came out with a Catholic vampire novel called The Curse He Chose.
Oh, nice.
Thank you. But we also do more digital media as well and audiovisual media. So we do a lot online. I also have a presence on social media, Instagram and X primarily. And we talk about connections with pop culture and the gospel in many ways. And so I think you saw that blog post on our Pauline Media Studies blog.
Yes.
I've written some different things about video games. I also am into anime, so sometimes touch on that. And then we have different sisters who are interested in different kinds of media who write about movies and TV shows and different things coming out, just making those gospel connections and helping people think about the media that they enjoy in the light of Christ, which I know is in line with a lot of what you guys do too.
Yeah, well, certainly I think that our mission here at the podcast was very deeply animated and inspired by the work of Blessed James Alberione and by the Daughters of St. Paul. I think gone through a period of my life where I was really trying to figure out where is the Lord's presence in all the media that I love. And later in college, seeing the works of Blessed James Alberione and who the Daughters of St. Paul were really clicked and connected with us. And even in naming this podcast, we were really inspired by the name of the sister who wrote this book is escaping me, but she has her book on cultural mysticism and being a cultural.
Sister Nancy Usselman.
Yes,
it's a really important question for people in our day who are so technology saturated. Some of us want to flee from media. Some of us want to stand firmly in it and see what we can grasp from it. So as you were talking about all the different ways that the Daughters of St. Paul and your community are working on and have an online presence, it reminded me of that line from St. Paul: "I became all things to all people, so that I might save at least some." So yeah, I don't know if that's a quote that your sisters think about often, but that's what came to my mind.
I know that I think about it often. Adaptability is so important, and we kind of have this mentality taught to us by our founder, Blessed James Alberione, to meet people where they are. He used to say that we're not here to reach out to the Christians of 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. We have to be here for the people of today and be where they're at. And so that's why we go to these places online and in publishing, because we're looking to encounter people with the things that they care about and are interested in today, and then to help them find the deeper meaning there, help them use that as a stepping stone in their relationship with God and getting closer to heaven.
Yeah. Perhaps to put it in another word, to find the reason that they long for these things, right? So yeah, beautiful. Thank you for your work and for your vocation.
Yeah, and so what drew you, Sister Allison, to the Daughters of St. Paul? Give us a brief little backstory on how did you come to the Daughters specifically, about that discernment process?
Yeah, I met the Daughters of St. Paul when I was in college at the Catholic University of America studying theology, actually. And Sister Emily Beata, a daughter of St. Paul, was one of my classmates. And so I kind of just became friends with her, like talking to her about the homework and the weather and stuff like that. And then she invited me to her renewal of vows. She was a junior sister at the time. And so I decided to come along to that. And then I was on the Daughters of St. Paul email list. And once you are on the Daughters of St. Paul email list, you never get off again. So I started visiting the convent, getting to know the sisters, and I really especially loved the way that the daughters prayed. Like the center of our spirituality is really scripture and the Eucharist, and especially we call it our visit with Jesus, the hour of Eucharistic adoration that we do every day. And that resonated so deeply with what the Lord had already been doing in my life. And then when I learned about our mission in the media, I just felt so much like this is such important work in our world today. Like there are so many people who slip through the cracks who don't have sisters that are there for them. Like there's sisters who help the poor, sisters who help those who are sick. And I'm like, well, what about the people who aren't sick or aren't poor, but they still need Jesus? And thinking about all of the people out there who really just kind of quietly fall away or get lost in all of the noise of our world, and like who's reaching out to them. And I really felt Jesus drawing me to the daughters of like that those are the people who are reaching out to them, and I want you to do this work too. And so that's kind of how I first got involved with the daughters. And I entered in 2017, made my first profession of vows in 2021, and I'm still a junior sister right now.
Okay, wonderful. So if somebody wanted to like continue in their own like spirituality with the Daughters of St. Paul and like with Blessed James Alberione, are there any like specific resources or things you might recommend, like where they could find readings of Blessed James Alberione, or like, I mean, is your prayer life, you know, pulling from his writings and his works? Is it predominantly Liturgy of the Hours? Like what is your spirituality that if somebody wanted to kind of adopt for their own home life, like what does that look like?
We do have a lot of different prayers that Alberione has left us. It's our Pauline prayer book, we call it, that it's only for people in the congregation. It's not like something that you can go purchase online. But we do have a number of books that we publish that are inspired by the spirituality of Blessed James Alberione. There's one called Live Christ, Give Christ, Prayers for the New Evangelization, I believe the title of it is. And that is one where it has a lot of the prayers that are in our prayer book, but kind of adapted for lay people and everybody to be able to use as well, and lots of different prayers for different forms of the media. We also have our website, pauline.org. There's a lot of different resources about Pauline life and the Daughters of St. Paul and our spirituality available on there. And there's actually a documentary that's available for free on YouTube about Blessed James Alberione called Media Apostle, that I think if you just Google like Media Apostle James Alberione, you can watch the whole thing and learn a lot about the Pauline family and about Blessed James Alberione and his life just from watching that documentary. So I think those would be good places to start.
I've seen the documentary. Have you seen the documentary on him before?
I'm not familiar.
It's worth a watch, and
go
maybe
watch it.
Something to discuss on this podcast. Yeah, I watched it a couple years ago. I have a group called Culture and Community. I actually meant to bring like a friend in my Culture and Community group bought me a mug with Blessed James Alberione's like face on it and just says awesome. Like Culture and Community. And I was like, I saw it in my kitchen this morning. I was like, I got to bring that on the podcast just to show it off. And I totally forgot it.
Too bad.
So imagine me holding my Blessed James Alberione.
Yeah, we'll crop in a picture.
We'll crop in a picture right
post.
Here. That'll be the thumbnail. So yeah, I was just very excited to have you on here and to be able to talk about kind of the things we've been like I've been learning about Blessed James Alberione and had some brief interactions with the daughters, but really, really wonderful and beautiful opportunity for us to be able to have you on our podcast today, and I know that we're very excited about that.
Yeah, and although I'm not as familiar with Blessed James Alberione as perhaps people who have watched his documentary or live in his religious community, I very much, just something that you said resonated with me. You think about like the different people that the Lord has called us to invite into communion, and the different people that the Lord has asked us to invite into his new covenant. And there really are like a significant number of people who the primary community that they find is an online community, is a media community. And so that's just something that's resonating with me in my own prayer life and in my own discernment recently of just like, who is the Lord wanting? Who does his heart long for? And it's a lot of these folks. So I'm grateful for the work that you do. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
brief question for you. How did you come to kind of be commenting on sort of like the anime and video game scene? Because I know that you have a couple of at least the blog posts that I've seen on What Remains of Edith Finch and a couple of other TV shows.
Studio Ghibli, I think, was one of them, perhaps. Yeah.
Tell us about kind of, is that your personal background and your interest in art, or how do you feel that you and your Catholic faith and being a religious sister has met that space of games, anime, and the like?
Well, I write about the things that I love, and I've always been a huge anime fan, and video games as well. I don't play video games a lot in the convent. We have a pretty busy schedule, but I grew up, watching my dad and my grandpa play Diablo 2 as some of my earliest memories, and, playing different games like Animal Crossing and Pokemon and like the Lego Star Wars games and different things like that, and then graduating to older games as well as I got older. And I think that as I started discerning religious life and thinking more about the ways that Jesus wants to be involved, not just only when we're at church on Sunday, but he wants to be involved in everything we do, like including our entertainment and the things that we do for fun in our free time, I started making more connections to the different video games I was being exposed to, or the anime that I was watching, or the books that I was reading, and thinking about it more in light of the faith and kind of asking more questions and thinking about it a little bit more critically or with a more discerning eye of like, well, what are the different messages or values being proposed here? How do they align with my Catholic faith? Where do they kind of separate from that, so that I could really engage more intentionally with the media that I was taking in? And when I started doing that and thinking about it more and getting really excited about like, wow, there's actually a lot of stuff here that you could pray about and a lot that you could talk about. I realized that there's other people out there who also wanted to do that, and other Catholics who were thinking about that too, or maybe people who would think about it if someone prompted them to think about it. And I just saw so much with my friends, even those who were not religious, they would get really into anime, or they would get really into a game that they were playing together. And I saw that there being a lot of common ground there, that like if you can connect with someone over media that they love, then you have a basis for your relationship where you can start building to other things as well. And that has helped me so often in my religious life, when like talking to young people or talking at schools or different, just encountering people on the streets and seeing their t-shirt and knowing where their t-shirt is from. It's been very helpful, I think, in reaching out to people who might not necessarily talk to a nun otherwise, or think about going to church otherwise. Like there's so much potential there. And so that's kind of how I got into it, I think. Beautiful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like the level of connection that you can have just because of a common media experience is just so true. I was helping lead one of our school retreats this week, and I saw a girl with a Cave Town T-shirt, which is a band which you may or may not be familiar with, but
I'm not.
Most people are not. And I saw this shirt. I was like, "Did you go to the AJR concert a couple of weeks ago?" And she was like, "Yes, were you there?" And the way that she lit up, when there was this connection, is just like, yeah, because of these common experiences of beauty that we have. And then there's like so much more to unearth there too. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Do you feel like you have any particular insights for those that are like maybe beginning this journey of like discerning the intersection of like their faith and the media that they consume? Like, cause you mentioned something like Diablo. I have not played Diablo, but like when certain games, I think come into the zeitgeist that are super popular, like I'm always exploring like, is this new game or something that I want to like be able to jump into? And there's a couple like here and there that I've discerned for myself, like, that just has like too many things in it that just, I don't feel like in good conscience I can jump into and play. And I only am thinking of the Diablo one because me and my fiance were watching a video of Bishop Sheen, one of his TV episodes, and then like in the middle of his very soft-spoken like prayerful spirituality, like commenting on some theological truth, an ad pops up and it's like, "Welcome to hell," and it's like the Diablo 4 ad, and it was just so jarring. Like it just took me from his time to like the 21st century, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was so wild.
The algorithm is like, "You're interested in demons, we'll show you this."
Yeah, I was like, wow.
So
like,
true.
I guess you connected that there's spirituality themes in all these games, and so I don't know anything about Diablo to really comment on Diablo specifically, but it was at least like making me think of, do you have any like principles or things that you try to apply in helping people discern, is this a work like that I should consume, or how do I approach, you know, things in video games? Because that seems to be like the common critique is like, well, there's violence in games, so let's throw out video games. How do you feel like you as a Catholic discern in that space?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. And I've written about this a couple different times for our blog as well. So people could also look at our Pauline.org media studies blog if they wanted like more in-depth.
Yeah, we'll put some stuff then in the show notes below too.
Yeah, but I think there's lots of different moving parts to this because each person is different, but we also have this Catholic faith that we share in common and kind of morals and values that we need to uphold even in our entertainment. But we also know that games are games. Like, it's not real life. If I kill someone in a video game, I'm not guilty of murder. And so I think that you have to look at, in the game itself, kind of what is going on there? Like what kind of values are they proposing? How are they doing it? Like, if there's violence, how much violence is it? How graphic is it? And what is the purpose that it is serving within the game itself? Because some games can be very realistic and very violent, but like the whole point of the game is kind of a commentary against violence, or that like this actually is a bad thing. Whereas some games are kind of more glorifying violence or a violent approach to solving problems. And I mean, violence is not the only problem in video games. There's other things as well. But because video games are such an immersive format, like you have agency, or at least the illusion of agency while playing the game. Like, you're actually making choices and doing stuff within the game. It's not just something you're watching. I think that we have to be particularly careful about what we choose to engage in and how it's influencing us, just to be aware of that. Because when you look at something like virtue and vice, that's from habits formed over time, from good or bad choices that you make and good or bad actions that you take. And in a video game, you're making a lot of choices, and those choices do not carry the same moral weight as they do in real life. But they are kind of training you into certain mindsets, or maybe influencing what positive or negative associations you have with something, or the mood that you're in. And that can kind of carry over into real life in various ways. And so I think that it's important for people to be attentive to how a certain game is influencing them, like when they play it. Like, is it actually something that is drawing you closer to God or making you more yourself, making you a better human? Or is it kind of pulling you away from that in various ways? And to kind of weigh, even if this game does have entertainment value, or it has some good messages mixed in with the bad messages, is the good really outweighing the bad in a significant way that you would want to play it? And a lot of that, I think, is also research you can do ahead of time. Like there's so many different places online where you can look to see other people reviewing it, or you can watch actual gameplay before you invest in doing it for 60 hours before you decide, yeah, actually that's bad for me. So I think that just to be conscientious about it and attentive to thinking about, okay, as a Catholic, how am I engaging with this? How do I want to engage with this? Is this something that I can get good out of? Or is it something that might be better for me to put my time somewhere else?
Yeah. I think that those principles about exactly like not everybody is going to be affected by a game in the same way, and the moral weight is really at a significantly lower level with regard to games. But I think that this idea about like the way that we train our brains is really important too. Because something that when you were talking, Charlie, about video games that had like big moral questions, two of them came to mind for me. And maybe you guys remember the controversies that these two things caused. Number one was, for me growing up, like the Assassin's Creed games were very fun. But like it was very like anti-church power. And that was like a really kind of weird piece. And then it culminated in the second Assassin's Creed, one of the levels, like you actually like punch the Pope or something like that. And like, you're like, whoa, like what exactly is being peddled to me here?
Yeah.
But the other one that's perhaps a little bit was like made a pretty big splash at the time was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, I knew exactly.
Yeah, and there was a level in there with an optional skip.
I think the level is called No Russian, and okay. I think that the level is that you are playing as like a group of terrorists, and you get off of a plane, I think, and you basically just shoot all of the civilians that are in the airport, and like.
Yeah, it's really heavy. Yeah.
Hey folks, Charlie from the editing booth here. I could have explained this a little bit better. We're talking about No Russian from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and you play as a United States, looks like CIA operative who was placed as a spy amongst a Russian terrorist group with the hopes of gaining trust of one of the terrorist group's leaders. You are walking into an airport at the beginning of this scene, and the Russians remind everybody to speak No Russian, which is the name of this level, No Russian, because they want to blame this as an American terrorist attack that would spurn us into World War III. So they speak No Russian as they go in trying to pose as Americans to kill many civilians. You as the player play as that CIA operative amongst these terrorists as they are gunning down civilians in an airport. And you as a player have an option to skip the level, or you could choose to just not shoot anybody as you walk through as the other terrorists are killing civilians. Or you can also choose to mow down the civilians with the terrorists. One can probably see why this is one of the most controversial scenes in a video game of all time. I remember playing it as a kid, and I don't think I really understood the story that I was playing. I was so young, but I at least feel like I can remember playing that and feeling like, I feel like this isn't right. I didn't even really comprehend. Just they put an objective in front of me, and I'm trying to complete the objective.
I was I don't know, I was like a 15-year-old. I was starting to get into my faith, and I was like, this seems like maybe something I should skip. But I also I felt the weight of the inertia of just but it's my game, and I want to play it, you know?
Yeah.
And
you want to see all the parts of the game. If it's in there, you want to know what it is.
Exactly right. You're right. I didn't get the game to not play the game, right? I got it so that I could play, I could experience it. And so that was a really interesting moral question for me. And I think that there was a time in my life where I pressed, let's play this level. And then I think I even played that game again. And then I was no, I never want to play that level again. That's pretty messed up. Yeah. So it was,
I
certainly I feel especially nowadays I'm noticing that there'll be moments in a story that I'm not able to skip through. Even in an MMORPGs. I was playing Skyrim recently, and in the early days of I think it was with I can't remember what guild it was with, but there's a quest where it just randomly picks an NPC in town, and you just have to go beat the person up, and it doesn't give you a reason why. It's go teach this person a lesson.
Great Scott.
And it had randomly assigned to me a priestess in Whiterun that I just had to go and beat up, and there was no way around it. And I was I don't want to do this. Yeah. I was this is wild, and it's at least started me thinking what is the morality of certain quests and things in games? And I don't have any perfect answers. That one I was I'm just gonna not do this quest line, and I'm gonna go explore another part of this game. That was my way around that piece. But I was even looking for is there ways I can just change my save file to skip past this and not that I don't know if it's necessary, but it's certainly, I think, good questions on just discernment of the media we consume. And I think I started thinking those things when I was playing Payday 2 as a kid. I loved that game. It was the gameplay of that is exactly what I love. It's a very cooperative game against AI. But the whole premise of the game was we're breaking into banks, we're tying up citizens, hog-tying them, and we're trying to rob the bank. And then the police show up, and you got to get out of the bank with as much gold as possible in a certain amount of time. And there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of okay, are we going in stealthily, or are we going in loud? And the gameplay and the mechanics and the team cooperation is very exciting. But I also started to reflect on what am I doing?
And how is it affecting me?
Yeah, talk about and I didn't feel oh, now I want to go harm civilians or hate the police or think that they're my enemy. That wasn't, I feel an experience I was having. But I was recognizing what habits or what virtues am I forming if the media I'm constantly consuming is villainizing innocent citizens and the police. I'm I just don't feel if I could take that gameplay mechanic and apply it to a different moral situation, that one just being so much about crime, I was this does not feel appropriate. And I was I can't keep playing that.
Sure.
Well, and I definitely think, because a lot of the things that you're raising here, I'm yes, I also have had to deal with this in the past. The Assassin's Creed games are ones that I was very interested in the storyline because I love historical games. And I actually had to make the choice at a certain point of I don't want to support a story that is making this much anti-Catholic stuff, such a huge part of the game. Because even if it is fictional, I mean, I don't think that Assassin's Creed really actually happened. But at the same time, it was like, yeah, I don't want to be supporting this franchise if they're really attacking the things that I believe are true and that I love. But I think that some of the situations you're mentioning here, where it's like you as the player want to do something different and the game isn't letting you, really gets into that question of agency, because video games give us the illusion of agency, but everything is pre-programmed into the game somehow, and it's made by people who have their own biases, and they're deciding what the consequences of your actions are going to be in the game. Like, if you do this choice, this happens. If you do this, this happens. And most video game developers and companies are not coming at the world with a Catholic worldview, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that, like, yeah, you're not going to feel quite at home in any video game because it's not the world God made. It's a world that somebody made as part of like their imagination and their way of seeing the world that's going to have its own blind spots and distortions. And so there's ways that like we can think about, okay, even if I really don't want to do this level, I realize for the mechanics of the game, it's requiring me to do that. I'm going to do it to get through the game maybe, or I'm not. Maybe I'm going to choose to stop playing the game. But either way, maybe I'm going to pray for the person who made the game and thought that that was a good thing to put in there, because that's not something that's a good thing to put in there. That's not something that I agree with and want other people to be doing either. So it's something that, yeah, I think it's an ongoing struggle. And the more complex games become and the more sophisticated they get as far as that illusion of agency getting better and better, we have to keep remembering that we are in a created world. It's a artificial reality in a sense. And even when games are super immersive, we're not the ones actually in charge. Like we're making choices, but that's all within the in-rule like context of the game. And so to remember like, okay, there's a difference there, and I need to keep having my own opinions about it even when the game really is immersive and it just wants to pull me along and I want to get pulled along. But to maybe take a step back and really reflect on that or pray with that and decide, is this something I want to continue getting pulled along in? Is this something I really want to play?
Do you guys think there's a space in which, and not to make this like an Assassin's Creed episode, but I've only played a little bit of like maybe Odyssey and Origins, the later one, that are like seem more like Greek and Egyptian history. And I remember the early Assassin's Creed, like 1 and 2, seemed to have like a lot of Catholic tropes, and like Adam and Eve was like a big part of it, and all these different things.
It's a very upside down view of free will.
What's that?
It's a very upside down view of free will and what it like reinterpreting Bible stories in very interesting ways, but it's very theologically inaccurate in so many ways. There's so many holes in their world building.
Yeah, I don't even remember entirely what they present as far, because I was so young when I played the first games. But I wonder, like, is there a space in which someone says, like, the first Assassin's Creed that are very, like, anti-faith, I'm less inclined to play, but, like, maybe the newer ones, and I don't even know. I haven't played enough of the newer ones to even know if I believe that. But I don't know. Like, do you guys feel like within a series, can someone be selective even? Or is it like when a franchise is presenting problematic issues that they haven't, like, pulled away from or recanted? Yeah, I don't know if I have any like specific answers to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that if we were to maybe compare this to compare like a video game series to a person, consider the fact that like a person is going to show up with like a certain set of worldview assumptions, and like when you go into a conversation with people, like sometimes those worldview assumptions become very clear very quickly. When you're in real life with a person, like you can really dialogue with them, and you can really like seek to examine the underlying assumptions that their worldview holds, and maybe promote some change, and maybe you're changed yourself positively or negatively. But I think also in like a video game series, it's like a little bit different because there's no dialogue partner, and there's no like person in the midst of that you like are trying to take the bad with the good. And so like, I don't know, the church for a really long time had the Index of Forbidden Books, which was like, that was like a real piece of like ecclesial life. Like, hey, we just don't mess with this. But I think if if I were to say, like, can you play Assassin's Creed Odyssey? Is there maybe something to glean from there? Yes, I think that there is. I think it is perhaps a discrete story. And I don't think that, like, I don't know, we say we vote with our dollars. I'm not sure that we necessarily vote for the entire worldview with our dollars. Yeah, I don't know. I think we can still be attentive without being agreeable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky because so much media today, not just in video games, but like in everything, is not following something that is exactly in line with Catholic teaching and understanding in every way. And if you cut out everything that has anything that is against the faith, then you lose a lot of that common ground that I was talking about earlier as far as connecting with people and understanding where others are at in our world today. So yeah. I think there is a balance there, but that does also come down to personal discernment in many ways, that like, I am not going to support the Assassin's Creed franchise myself. I'm also a religious sister, and I'm coming at that from a very specific point of view, whereas somebody else might be able to, in good conscience, play like the later games and not have an issue with that, but not be paying money to the earlier games. I don't know. I'm thinking about it also like if there's an author I like and they write lots of books and one of their books I think is terrible and has lots of stuff in it that I don't like, but their other books are good. Like, yes, when I buy their other books, I am supporting their livelihood, but that doesn't mean I'm saying that I agree with everything they've ever said or ever done. So yeah, it is a hard question though. It's very tricky. Yeah. There's a lot of gray area.
I think that all, and to kind of wrap this conversation up too, not to make it all about just like a particular franchise, but I think that all these questions, I think to me have been things I'm looking at with so many things. I'm like, can I patron this business because they have certain signs in here that I don't agree with, and like certain ways that they're like representing like this grocery store that I love, but also is advertising like local events that I like do not support. And like, I think those are just always good questions about moral discernment. And I feel like I keep coming to what's the terminology? Remote and proximate and formal and material cooperation with evil. Yeah, I feel like applies to this conversation. That if somebody wanted to do more reading and research, I feel like that's a thing to look up, as the Catholic theology on material and formal cooperation with evil. Yeah, for sure. And I think one like kind of principle that comes to mind is that I just want to throw this in there just to like kind of illustrate that point, is like, if I encounter someone and like, let's say that like they're someone who's an alcoholic, and I encounter them on the street and they're begging for money for food, we often talk about like, should I give that person food if they're an alcoholic? Should I not? And the idea of remote cooperation with evil is, hey, like I am actually like, if I gave them money in the hopes that they'll buy food, I'm not responsible for their sin, but I am seeing their personhood. I am seeing their value. And so like there is a good that I've done, even if it does even if it does end up having negative effects. And you can't apply that quite in the same way to video games, quite in the same way to media consumption. But I think that it's important to realize that like, there's a world of people that we're called to love. And one of the opportunities that we have in the midst of these games and these movies and this music that we listen to is to try to see them where they are, and then to encounter them. And I think that's actually really important. So I don't know. Yeah. It makes me think, like, I don't know, maybe there's a balance in discernment here and prudence in that, like, on the one hand, we don't want to, like, throw out everything that culture offers and say all of it is evil and bad and nothing is redeemable, and also just not be able to connect with other people on, like, a human level. But on the other hand, it's like, if nothing about the way I consume media changes because of my relationship with Jesus Christ, that's probably not totally like a way to go also. And maybe there's like that's the process of prudence and discernment of, like, how do I engage with this stuff? Yeah, and like the importance of knowing your faith. Oh, sorry. And I was just going to say your own oxygen mask first, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But. Yeah. And like the importance of knowing your own faith and being aware of your media consumption enough to look at, okay, what does the church teach about this? How is this different from what I'm getting in this media, so that you can do that process of discernment with awareness? Because a lot of times it just becomes so normalized or so commonplace that we don't even
consider it. And a lot of video games especially, but most media tries to get you into some type of flow state, or it uses addictive structures to kind of keep you there. And so the structure of the media itself is not well suited for being able to take a step back and think about it on a deeper level. So if you want to do that, you got to actually try to do it and make that a priority.
Yeah, I do want to get to Edith Finch, but I really love this point. So I'm just gonna hop in here. I had two experiences of like really like I feel like good media consumption. One was from a buddy of mine, Topher, in college. He I would say sometimes, hey, do you want to hang out? He's like, yeah, let's hang out. What do you want to do? I was like, well, I was thinking about seeing this movie at the theater. He's like, do I want to pay $10 to go sit in the darkness for 2 hours and then go home? No. But if you promise me that we'll hang out by the fire and talk about the movie afterward, I'll hang out with you. And I was like, that's like pretty sweet, you know, like
I love
break
that.
the narrative. So I love that idea, and so much what the culture and community group is about is like, let's consume media and then talk about it together as an occasion for potential grace, and then as an occasion for moral and theological formation, you know. I love that. And then I was also visiting a religious house one time, and was just spending time with them, and it was a feast day, so they were able to watch a film on the feast day. So we watched one of the Pope movies. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Pope movies, but they're like tear jerkers. I really love them. But their rule at this religious house was that, hey, if 30 minutes of a movie at a time, because we're in formation. And I was like, whoa. So we stopped the movie. We started the movie like 30 minutes in and stopped at 30 minutes from its completion or whatever it was. And I was like, I've never experienced this before. But like, it was also so good because like everything that was in moderation, and the story wasn't like they were interrupting that structure of constant attention getting, which was important for them.
That seems really interesting, and a way to respond to something that I was thinking of is like, sometimes I feel like there's the danger of curiosity when it comes to media, which is like, oh, there's so much bad here, but I really want to know how the story ends. And that can really get you. And I think that I've had to like have some moments where like, I remember sharing a video game with my fiance and was like, oh, I like, look at this game. This is amazing. I love this. And I like showed the opening scene, which like just captivated me and was so wild. And she was like, Charlie, I don't think this is like, there's kind of like a lot of violence and a lot of like stuff going on. And so she had like more of a sensitive heart towards it. And I think she helped me see like, oh yeah, you're right. Like there's probably some things that I'm kind of desensitizing myself to. And I so wanted to know the ending of the story though. And thankfully, I think that a response to that was like, well, I'm just going to not sink another 40 hours into this game just to know how the story ends. And like, I'll watch the YouTube recap that's like 12 minutes long. And I was satisfied. Like, it was okay. Like, I actually loved just knowing the story, and I'm glad I didn't have to spend 40 hours to figure that out. So I just think that danger of curiosity can be like a dangerous thing sometimes too.
Sure.
Do you have any final comments, Sister Allison, like towards anybody like who I feel like in the church right now is looking for understanding like where their love for anime and video games and their faith interacts? Like any just things that come to mind can pass, if not also.
Well, I think that something that you guys mentioned relates to finding community, like finding good Catholic community for your media consumption, whether it's video games or anime or whatever else you're interested in. If you have other people that you can talk with about it and kind of bounce things off of, or even watch things or play things together and discuss them, people who come, like who share your values and come from like a similar place as you do, that can be so helpful in being able to check yourself when you need to, like because you have other people that are involved in this process, but also of opening up a lot of new grace and things that you might not have seen by yourself just by having those discussions and looking at it on that deeper level together. I think of it always like whenever we do any kind of faith sharing or Lectio Divina in a group setting at the convent, I have the thing that I was praying with, but then hearing what everybody else shares like edifies me so much and also helps my prayer life so much. And the same thing happens when we watch a movie. We always talk about it at the convent afterwards. And that I get so much more out of it from a spiritual perspective in that way. So I think if it's possible for you to find community, like Catholic community that is also involved in the type of media interests that you have, that can be like a really good, solid place to start.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for recommending that. And I certainly like the format that I know me and my friends like in lay life have developed is that culture and community setup. But if anybody wanted to do that, I recommend like pick one like day a month or every 2 weeks is what we do. Like we pick a new topic, a new movie or a new book or something. It's typically a movie and we watch it on our own and then we come together every 2 weeks and have time to share life a little bit, catch up, talk about the movie for like an hour, share a lot of different perspectives of what we like, dislike from a moral perspective, and then we just try to end with some piece of prayer and some scripture that we feel like connects to our discussion. Has been a nice little format. And I know that you guys with the Daughters of St. Paul, I haven't purchased any of them yet, but I know that you guys have some like film guides, like Cinema Divina guides, and you've had some film retreats, which I'm super excited to jump into. I have not been on one of the film retreats because they're like, I just either they hit at a time and I can't go, but if anybody's interested in like how do I pray with the media that I'm enjoying, I certainly am interested in exploring those. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, we have those guides available online, and it's really, you can do it by yourself and then talk with people afterwards, but it's really for like group viewing to pray intentionally with movies in a format similar to Lectio Divina, where you're kind of looking at what God might be speaking to you through that movie and then connecting it to a scripture passage. So those are all available on our website. I think there might be a couple that are available for free, like to see like what they're like, and then some of the other ones are behind a paywall. But we've done a lot of different movie guides over the years, and so there's a lot of different kinds of genres and things available there.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this because I need to select today what our next. Typically, we vote as a group on what our next like film is going to be, and we didn't pick one this last group meeting. We kind of ended too soon, and
maybe
so I got to pick
some.
one. So I'm gonna choose one of your movie guides this time around and select one. We have watched your guys' film retreats that you've advertised have inspired a couple of our film choices. I just like saw that this was in the email, and it was like recently, I think last year, maybe like during Lent, there was like the Wonder story of I don't remember what like the part 2 to Wonder was called. There's another film that came out that was kind of a
White
sequel.
Bird? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Red Bird, White Bird? Yeah. I don't know. A bird. That is a color.
Yeah, it's that film. So thanks for inspiring our film consumption as well with the daughters, whoever's in charge of selecting those films. Well, to jump into our game of choice for today, What Remains of Edith Finch? Where does anybody want to start? As far as I guess like people that have played it, I know that I've played it. You've, I think, watched.
I watched a playthrough because it's a pretty quick game anyway.
Yeah.
And I know you've at least watched it, Sister Allison.
I've watched the playthrough many times. I don't play it. I'm not that actually good at video games, but I really like watching walkthroughs. So I've watched multiple walkthroughs of it.
Well, tell me, like, your experience with the game. Like, obviously, you were inspired to write a reflection on it and how it connects to Memento Mori, and we'll put that in the show notes below. But tell us your brief thoughts, like, on the game, on just Edith Finch in general.
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, the game is basically this girl going back to her childhood family home to explore her family history that she was never told as a child. Basically, everybody in their family thinks that they're under a curse to die in horrible ways. And so she's kind of in each part of the house finding some kind of documentation that tells her about each family member and how they died. And to me, first of all, it's a beautiful game just from a storytelling perspective because it's told through her diary. And like as you're walking around the house as her, kind of looking at different things, you're seeing the words of her diary like come up on the screen in different places. And it's like she's reading it out loud to you. And then as you like discover different family members, like journals or magazines or whatever it is that tells about their life, it's like you kind of get a little episode through their eyes and their story, and you're kind of like living their last moments with them, but also in like a diary form where it's like telling you kind of as it's happening. So I just think it's, from a storytelling perspective, it's brilliant because it's like an interactive book almost, to me it feels like. Like you're walking, you're walking through her diary and kind of participating in it. Like you're not making your own choices. You can't change what happens in the story. Like this is what the diary says, and you have to go the places where the diary takes you. But because you're kind of walking in her shoes, seeing it through her eyes, it's a really immersive experience in that sense. But I think thematically what really struck me about it is it really is about death and grief and how you deal with the loss of loved ones. And there's this whole discussion throughout, like, is the curse even real? Like, is it something that the family, because they kept all of these stories and they think there's a curse, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're kind of bringing on themselves? Or is there really something actually kind of spooky going on that is following this family around and nobody can escape it? And it leaves a lot of those questions open-ended, which I really appreciate, because it allows the player to kind of think about it for themselves and find their own answers there. But all of that reflection that the main character, Edith Finch, is doing on death makes us think about it too. And like, what does it mean? It's a kind of creepy game. It's a little bit depressing because, of course, everybody dies pretty much, that you're they've already died. She's going back and learning about their stories. But there's room there for hope in the resurrection too, and room to think of like, okay, well, how do I want to live my life well? Like, we're all going to die. We might not die in such weird ways as the characters of Edith Finch, but it does make you think about like, okay, you don't know when your end is going to be. How do you want to live? And then when you've lost someone, how do you want to remember them? Like, what's the best way to honor them and keep them as a part of your life? And you see different characters have good and bad ways of handling that in various ways. They kind of go to the extremes. So it explores a lot of those things in a very natural way through the story itself, which I really love.
Yeah, just from like a pure like storytelling perspective, also, since you're commenting on the way that the game is formatted, I feel like I keep asking myself this question occasionally with my love for video games, because I love them, but I keep asking myself, like, what is video games offering me as like a storytelling medium compared to like movies and TV and books and music? And certainly it's the interactive piece, but sometimes I get frustrated by like, man, so many games nowadays are like 40 hours long, and I'm like, is this a well-worthy investment of my time? Like, when I compare the cost-benefit ratio of like a movie, sometimes like a 2-hour movie just, man, it can make me reflect on my life in a powerful way. And video games can too, but Edith Finch stands out as an example for me of like really well done masterpiece exploration of like the video game medium. Yes. Like, I remember playing through it, and just the fact that like each of these rooms is its own little like game. Like, there's different mechanics for every story that you're telling. Like, you walk into Molly's room, which is also the time when I was like, what game am I playing? When you turn into a cat and then you turn into an owl, and it feels weird. Like, you get this eye perspective like from the owl, and you're like swallowing these whole rabbits. I'm like, what? And then when you turn into a shark and you're like tumbling down like the side of the cliff. That's what I was like, I don't know what I've found myself playing, and I cannot understand the genre of this game yet. Like, that's where the game changed for me. But like, you know, then you get to Lewis's like room, where he's like, you know, in his imagination, and you're like chopping the fish. It's like everything was so different. And when you get to Barbara's room, and it's going, or at least her life, and it's through the like haunted like magazine, like the way they told it, like it was so many different games wrapped into one. Like, the art styles were different, and like I loved that they told such an expressive, interesting, interactive story in like 2 to 3 hours. Like, you could play it really quickly. Was amazing. I really like the storytelling of Edith Finch. And for people that haven't played it, one thing I think is at least worth noting that kind of blew my mind, that was really, really interesting, was when you're in Lewis's room, and Lewis is the brother who, like, his room is the one that's got like legalized marijuana, and he's got like bongs all over the place. And he's the guy that works at the cannery, and you know, it shows him like chopping the fish over and over and over. And then like his imagination, you know, is in like a little part of the screen, and he's like imagining himself as a king and like this mayor. And eventually, like, you know, the imagination starts taking up more and more of the real estate space on the screen, where then like the fish just becomes like a part of it. If you haven't played it, one thing that is really cool about the mechanical side of things is like your left thumbstick is controlling the imagination guy walking on a path, and your right thumbstick has to keep grabbing the fish. and then moving it to the cutter.
Whoa, interesting.
And I like it, and like it's just so weird. Like I'm manipulating two different things at the same time, and you really feel like a mechanical connection to what Lewis is doing, where like he's in his mind on the one part, and then he's like cutting fish. And I like remember feeling a little bit nervous because I was like, oh, if I'm like paying attention to the left screen and I move the thumbstick too far right, like am I gonna chop off Lewis's hand? And I think I probably tried it once or twice, like let's push it all the way right, and like does it hit an invisible wall or something? But that like mechanical interaction with the game was really cool. And I was like, they've really designed the story to like, I feel Lewis like in a way because I'm playing it. So I just have to give credit to, there's only a handful of games where I really feel like the gameplay mechanics have made me experience the story they're trying to communicate.
Yeah, you would
in a
never have
different way.
experienced that a different way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's brilliant. And I think you see that not just with the mechanics, but also in all of the ways that they're using unreliable narrators, for example. Like they pick the best format for each episode that works like to tell that character's story, and they're all so different from each other. But one thing that I love too is because you're seeing the words on the screen as like you're reading Edith's diary, but then also reading all of these other documents that she comes across. And sometimes what the images that you see on the screen do not really match what the words are saying, or it's revealing different information to you. And so the narration and the actual setting and gameplay do not always match. And then you're like, okay, so this is this person's perspective on what happened. Am I seeing what really happened, or am I seeing what the character experienced happened, but it wasn't what they wrote down? Or like all of those different dichotomies, it really raises a lot of questions. Like you have to be actively interpreting the game the whole time, not just in the way that you're playing and walking through it, but also in the way that you're making sense of the stories that she's receiving from different family members.
Yeah. I've just certainly seen some wild theories on like unpacking this game. The wildest of which I just watched like a couple hours ago. There's a video online you can watch that's like, it basically presents that like there is no curse. Edie is the curse. She's actually murdering all of her family members.
No kidding.
And
Wow.
I was like, get out of here. Like, and then you started unpacking it, and I'm like 20 minutes into this episode, and I'm like, dang it, you're kind of convincing me. Like, it's an interesting video to watch if you want to look at like, he kind of presents like basically like, wow, like the average age of this family is 15 years old. And even like Odin, who like came across the sea like with this house, like he died at like 60 or 50 or like, Walter, maybe, I think was his name, that like holed himself up in the basement like for decades. Like he only lived to like 50. But Edie's like 93. And it's like, how did she escape this?
Dun, dun, dun.
So there's certainly some really wild things about like Edie is actually the cause of a lot of her family members' deaths, and that's why like the mom doesn't want her to tell these stories, and like why she feels like she is killing her children like with these stories that she's telling. Anyways, there's so many questions that are left unanswered, and there's probably so many theories you could throw out there, but that was one that I was like, that reshaped the way that I'm thinking about this game entirely.
That did actually occur to me as I was like, I think it was like the second time I watched it, I was like, wait, she's so old. What's going on here? But what I love about this game is that there's actually, I've seen lots of different theories of what could be actually going on. Like maybe the house really is supernatural. Maybe it is all in their head. Maybe like all of these things, they all seem equally plausible. And like you can't find an answer in the game itself for sure. And I love that because it leaves it really open for you to kind of ponder, okay, what do I think happened, or what is the most likely? But some things just remain a mystery. Like, we'll never know.
Yeah, I know some people have interpreted the game in regards to like something along the lines of like maybe it's like all these parenting decisions that they've made that they're then kind of retelling through a story that helps them cope with it. Like the parent who leaves their child in the bathtub while they like answer a phone call, and like the fact that he passes there, or like the mom, Edie, who like sends her daughter to bed without food, but then it like leads to maybe is she eating like some poisonous berries and some fluoride toothpaste and like some things in her room that were like poisonous, and she actually just died from eating, stuff because she was hungry. But now it's fictionalized as like the hallucinations.
Supposedly there's this monster, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's very interesting too. And it also like adds to like the terror of so much in this game, which is like, man, so many like maybe innocuous things, such as like, I mean, it's it seems like a common practice throughout a lot of different years of parenting that people would send their kids to bed without food. I'm not a psychologist. I don't feel like that's nowadays like the best method of how to punish a kid. But it's certainly like, wow, parents have probably done that and their kid didn't die as a result. And it's like, man, I feel like there's so many decisions like that where it's like a small little failure on someone's part leads to like a massive consequence. And that's like, I don't know, kind of a piece of the story that I see, like the parent who takes the phone call and they just drained the bathtub for their kid and she steps out for a second and then he passes away. And it's like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah. Well, and like 2 of the kids die because they were left playing in an area that was dangerous outside, unattended. Like the one on the swing and then the one flying a kite on a beach storm.
Yeah.
like it's a lot of the deaths really are quite preventable and they happen when the family members are alone. Like I noticed that like none of the deaths that we see, no, I think none of them happen when they're with somebody else in their family. Like they're all isolated in this big house or isolated outside. And I think that's very telling too, that like, yes, they are a family, but are they really there for each other in the ways that matter? It seems like not so much. Oh, I guess the one who dies because of the deer knocks him off the cliff. His daughter was there.
And that one scarred me when I first played the game. That one like really caught me off guard, and I feel like I just sat there looking at that scene in my mind. Like, I don't know why that one like really connected with me.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
there's
rough.
a lot of like other really horrifying ones, like the death of like an infant, like, you know, and like all these other ones. But for whatever reason, that one just like surprised me, and I just saw like from Dawn's perspective, like my dad just died, and I got a photo of it. You know, like I have a photo of him. There was something about that, like where it pauses on the photo of him about to die, and all I can think about is like Dawn playing out the rest of her day. Like, I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, and that puts you so close into the scene because the way that the game is working at that point is you're the one taking photos. And so you're as close as someone would be with a camera. And in a way that gives you the distance to fully experience the horror. Like you're not seeing it through his eyes as he dies like you do some of the other characters. But because you're usually in the other character's like head, it kind of pulls you out before the actual moment of death. Like the screen just kind of goes black and it'll tell you, and that's how it ended. But with that one, you see it, like you see it actually happen, and then it pulls out. So I feel like the storytelling technique that they're using of having you be the photographer, taking all of these innocent snapshots of family vacation, kind of daddy-daughter day together in the woods, turning into this horrible tragedy, makes it hit a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's certainly something I'm thinking of, like almost a little bit of like Dante-like in that, I don't know, I'd have to explore this thought, but is there a space in which we're seeing like all the like little sins of all these family members, like, you know, leading to their downfall?
That was one of the first things that I was thinking of when I was playing the game, when she became a shark and she had to eat everything, right? You know, and I was like, first of all, why would she eat toothpaste? Second of all, why would she eat strange red berries?
Yeah.
You know, and then she became a shark and she was like, I am so hungry. And I was like,
and then like a monster who eats people.
Yeah. And so I immediately thought of like, is this going to be a commentary on the 7 deadly sins? Like I hadn't read anything about it before. But that's very true. It's like her thing was gluttony and his thing was maybe vanity from taking all those pictures, right? And maybe there was like kind of like a pride in some of the characters too. Maybe.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking of the dad, like a little small moment, but it's understandable. But you know, he runs over and is posing with the deer, and she's like, "Dad, like I think he's moving," and she's like, "No, it's all right, honey. Like that always happens." And then he dies because he like didn't take seriously her like concern, or like didn't take seriously this child's like perspective on something. Now, granted, like animals do twitch, you know, like so when after they're dead. So it's like you can kind of see that as understandable. But it's like, is that a small little moment where they're saying like, oh, the dad's like inability to pay attention and look at the situation and listen to his daughter's concerns, like led to this? I mean, I don't know, you know. And it's like, whoa, like such a small thing is exploding into a really big conclusion.
You definitely see that with the 2 who died outside. I think it's Calvin and Gus. That both of them, it was kind of like their stubbornness of like, wanting to go all the way around the swing and not come in when mom is calling, or not wanting to be in the wedding pictures at all, not listening when anyone tells you to come inside. Like that, in both of those cases, that kind of directly leads to their death. And I think you could make that argument for a lot of the characters. One that always kind of feels different to me is the way that Dawn dies, Edith's mom, like because she dies in a hospital like after leaving like of some unknown illness. And she's still young. I think she's like in her late 40s when she dies. But her death seems much more natural than everybody else's in the story. Like she doesn't die of an accident, she dies of an illness. And with Edith too, it's kind of implied, a major spoiler, that Edith dies at the end. It's implied that she like died giving childbirth. And so I think it's interesting that with those characters, like most of them, you could argue like, yeah, that could be the curse or some freak accident caused by your paranoia because you think there's a curse. But then also sometimes people just die and it's tragic, but there's not necessarily like an in-game explanation for like how the mom got sick or what sin she was showing that would lead to that. Like it's sometimes it is shown that death is random and kind of out of our control and really sad. And we just have to deal with it. And I think what you see a lot of the characters trying to do is deal with the perceived senselessness of death and trying to make sense of it. But through most of the game, they're doing that without any reference to like the resurrection or belief in the afterlife. I was thinking if that was my family, I think we would be like the most religious family ever, because it would be like, okay, this is a curse. We don't know how to deal with that. Time to go to church. And that's not how you see most of the characters reacting, except Dawn. Edith does say that her mother is found comfort in religion, and you see different like religion, like she's a Bible and a rosary. And I think I read somewhere online that she has a cup, a mug in her office that is for a Lutheran church. Like, so she's Christian, but that gives her a lot of comfort, whereas other family members don't seem to have that source of comfort, and that sometimes leads to their downfall, like Walter with his paranoia, or like Lewis in the cannery just kind of falling into depression after everything that happened.
You're making me think of I haven't seen the mug, but today I was watching again a gameplay overview this morning, and there's a moment, I don't think I'd maybe seen the prayer, maybe I'd forgotten about it, but there's a prayer, I think, in Dawn's room of, I don't remember exactly, but it's like a prayer for guidance, and it specifically mentions, like, it's a prayer to Jesus Christ. And I was like, I wonder if that's like a prayer that's a traditional one as opposed to one that the game had made up, and so, because I wasn't familiar with it.
I read
and
about
I looked it
it
up, and it is a prayer, and all the websites that had come up were all Lutheran websites. So if there's something else in the game, it was feeling like there was some Lutheran presence in the game.
Yeah, I think that I was reading about that too, and it said that some of those seem to belong to her husband Sanjay, who died. It's implied that he died in an earthquake while helping with like disaster relief stuff. So that maybe she got her faith from him or was keeping things kind of because of the connection there. But it's interesting too that like even marrying into the family could lead you to an untimely death, according to their kind of the way that they're seeing it.
It makes me wonder if there's a space in which, like, in viewing this game, you know, maybe we see a presence of faith in Dawn, Edith's mother, but maybe with like Edie, who I don't know if we really see a presence of faith in her or not, but like you kind of see like what happens when we strip out the faith and we strip out the church, when we strip out the sacraments. How does a person encounter like death? It kind of, at least for that family, becomes something very toxic, and they're kind of like, I feel like, to take like a Christopher West phrase, I feel like he's, to me, become popular for saying like, you know, the devil doesn't have his own clay, so he can only like twist what God has made. He can like twist God's clay, and I feel like there's a little bit of a twisting of God's clay here, in that they're kind of like sacramentally building these rituals to commemorate the dead and make up these stories to try to like cope with death. Like when you don't have a hope in the resurrection and you don't have a hope in redemption, that this is, and all the suffering that seems senseless, such as like Christ's crucifixion, like if there's no resurrection that actually like offers me hope, well then perhaps I just have to close off everybody's room so that I can remember them and I can make some story about how it actually ends in a hopeful manner when maybe it like didn't. Like, I don't know. I wonder if like, cause that would be like a really like, what's the word? Like traumatic home to grow up in, you know?
Yeah.
Like to have death everywhere and all these rooms are walled off and
or like in your actual bedroom because they split off half the bedroom sometimes if your sibling died and you just had to keep being in that room. Like that's really messed up.
There's like a fleeing from death on a lot of characters' parts. Like they literally move their room or they go up higher or they like hide in the basement out of fear. And yeah, there's certainly like I don't know, it's almost like I feel like if the human soul that I'm made with is seeking out like a sacramental encounter with Jesus and I'm not finding the actual fulfillment of that, maybe it explodes into like the Finch house. Like that's what it looks like in a fictional world.
Yeah, we definitely see a series of like meaning-seeking activities from Edie, and it's not quite clear. I think you wrote about this in your article a little bit, sister. But the way that she seems to be coping with death is to like make memorials, and like I think that's like the next closest thing that we can come up with outside of the resurrection is memory. And like remembering our ancestors and remembering those we love, and like even trying to, in one sense, whitewash their memory, right, from all of those dark things that have been encountered. But that also like that doesn't have necessarily a basis in like in the truth, the whitewashing, and not necessarily a basis in reality when it comes to I'm still connected to them through memory because even memory is something that fades as we age. So memory is not something that can save us, but it feels very powerful and it's important when we have it, but it's also not something that saves us. I think that's a really important thing to remember.
And it kind of consider. And it kind of keeps Edie stuck in the past, like because memory doesn't make anything new in the future. Like she's artificially preserving the past and trying to keep it all present, but that kind of ruins her other living family members' present moment, like in there. And yeah, the whole game feels very oppressive to me and very dark, especially like you're going there at twilight and it's getting darker and darker kind of throughout the game. And the only like bright scene is really at the very end when Edith's son comes to visit her grave. He's like a little boy and puts white lilies on her grave, and then the sun is shining. And to me, because white lilies are traditionally like a symbol of the resurrection, to me that kind of hints at like a hope of the future that, okay, maybe Edith didn't survive, but she wrote this diary for her son so that he would know the stories, but she wrote it with all the reservations and, you know, like I don't think Edie was right. I don't think my mom was totally right either, but like there's some way in between. And then she's passing that along to her son. And I don't know, for me, I was just hoping like maybe this cyclical trauma can finally be broken in some way because of that work that she did to pass on a legacy to her son that wasn't so damaging to him, but still giving him something to live by.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that definitely highlights the importance of like, just like the role of the family across time is to like, you know, kind of extend itself and preserve that which is valuable. But definitely what you're saying is like, yeah, like she tried to give him something, she gave him what she had, but she also couldn't give him everything, right? But I wonder, like, there's a moment at the end where I'm looking at him on this island and I'm like, is a tree branch going to fall on him or something? You know, like,
really?
Is there going to be like some last hurrah?
Oh, man. What an ending.
But no, he needs to continue the Finch legacy so they can keep getting cursed. That's my thought.
I want to come back to something you said earlier, sister, that I haven't like put all these pieces together, but I feel like there's some depth in all these pieces that I'm starting to explore. You had mentioned, you know, that like a lot of their deaths were like alone, and that there's not a strong like experience of like community and family. You know, I mean, like Edith is like fleeing from her mother to like find solace in Edie, and Edie has a toxic relationship with her daughter Dawn, and like there's certainly a lot of like hiding and holding away. I mean, evidenced by the fact that like all their rooms are very, very separate, and like the dining room is kind of like an explosive nightmare where like everything had like kind of come to a like explosive conclusion of like that's the last place that we like saw each other, and so there's not really like this common family sense. Which is interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that the main thing that stood out to me in this that I was thinking about was like the power of memory. And like even just yesterday, I had a class reunion, my first like high school class reunion, and like just like the experience of like being around people and like memories of like, wow, like a lot of beauty there, and also like, man, I was kind of an idiot in high school. Like wish I would have like been a lot different, or like noticed the like I see now with like more maturity like all these incredible people that I was able to talk with. That I was like probably very like in my own world and in my own bubble and not noticing their goodness when I was in high school at the same level that I can see that now. So like regrets and memories. And one of my friends and we used to play like RuneScape as a kid. And occasionally throughout like history, I've like, I don't know why I said it that way. Occasionally in my life, I've like turned on the RuneScape soundtrack or like the Shadow of the Colossus soundtrack or Majora's Mask, these games that have like really hit me. And just when I play those soundtracks, like the nostalgia, the experience of like seeing the world in a different way, like my memory is so powerful. And I see that really in Edith Finch a lot. And so I'm like, what in my Christian Catholic tradition really speaks into memory? Well, I'm thinking of St. Augustine and his Confessions. And as I was exploring some resources on that today, there was a priest who had written some books on like memory as like St. Augustine presents it. And I'm new to the way he was explaining things, and I'll link it in the show notes below, but he seemed to be talking about, you know, like I mean, memory in our tradition is huge in that, like, with the Exodus, right? And, like, the remembrance of what God has done for us. And, like, our remembrance is not just remembering a thing that happened long, long ago, but it's helping us look at, like, who am I and my identity. It's making present these mysteries of God, of how God delivered me from slavery. Like, I think that even the Jews, when they celebrate Passover, say, like, this is the night on which, like, you know, we were delivered. Like, it wasn't, like, a long time ago this happened. And he was unpacking, you know, like, also in the central part of the Mass, like, we say, like, or Jesus says, like, do this in remembrance of me. And he was talking about how memory, in his understanding of St. Augustine, is about this, like, remembering that we are one in the body of Christ, and that, like, we are remembered. Like that connection of memory and being one with the body of Christ, I don't really yet understand. But it's interesting that, like, in a game that I see as so central about memory, you're kind of commenting on how you see that there's, like, individuality and that they have forgotten
a significant amount of isolation as opposed to actually coming together. That's interesting.
And this priest was saying, like, the core thing that we've forgotten, according to St. Augustine, it seems like we've forgotten that we are one in the body of Christ. So that's all new to me, but I don't know, you were just helping me unpack some of those themes.
Well, that's really interesting, because I was thinking of even the way that they separate the house out by keeping all the rooms separated. Like, it's really completely against integration. Like, I'm thinking, like, usually in a house, if someone dies, like, you wouldn't, like, just wall it off and leave everything exactly the way that it was. You would, like, keep certain things maybe from that loved one, or have pictures of them around the house, but that space then becomes a new place for the family to gather in a different way, or like a new bedroom for someone else, or it's like integrated into the larger family memory, and you keep on living but with the memory of that person. But in this house, it's so walled off, and so like, you're not allowed to touch it, you're not even allowed to go there, it's not your space, it's this dead person's space, that it fractures the house more and more, and the spaces in the house and the relationships with the family members in the house. So I feel like it does fit. But I was also thinking about memory in the sense of, like, we're specifically in this game looking mostly at remembering the dead. And in Catholicism, whenever you're thinking about the dead, there's also the whole idea that, like, they're still around. Like, the communion of saints, or the souls in purgatory, like, you can still pray for their intercession and they can pray for you. Like, they're not completely just vanished or trapped in the past with no way into the future. Like, they're still with God somehow, and they can interact with us still in through our prayer, and that we're going to be reunited with them again. And you don't have a sense so much in Edith Finch of this, like, forward motion into the future. Like, Edie is stuck in the past. And I think it's interesting for a house that is so creepy and could come across as so haunted. I never, while watching any of the walkthroughs, got a sense of, like, the ghost of the person is with me now, or, like, maybe that the house is possessed, but not that the family members were really still present in an active way who had died. Which is very interesting to me, like, looking at it from that perspective, without the idea of the communion of saints or the resurrection of the dead, that, like, no, that this is all that's left of them, this echo of the last thing that happened to them, but it's only an echo. They're not really here anymore.
That's interesting. The only thing that I can think about, like, are there any characters in which I see that they're like interacting or having some sort of presence with a lost member is like in Lewis's imagination as he's going up to his like coronation ceremony right before his head is chopped off. The narrator, who is at that time the therapist, says like, you know, that the person that was with him was this wise calico who like insisted on being his advisor. And if you look to the right, there's a big cat there, the calico, that is Molly. It's got a Molly name tag on it.
Oh, no kidding.
It seems to. I don't know if I noticed that the first playthrough.
That's interesting, but they did say that they had a cat named Molly too.
Did they have a cat named Molly?
Well, yeah, I think Dawn. Oh, I don't remember which family member said it, but yeah, it was that they had named their cat Molly later on. But obviously they're naming it Molly after the Molly who died. And so I don't know if the family was kind of thinking of the cat as like, this is the presence of Molly in the house or something. Could be.
But it's kind of interesting that it's like the one guy in the house that's like the marijuana bong smoker guy is the one that's also like somehow tapping into some spiritual connection with an animal or a family member. Like, it also seems like when you deprive somebody of like spirituality, like drugs probably enters in a strong capacity because you're seeking for some simulation or like some taste of the spiritual that like it can't fully offer you, which is why like addiction sets in. But I just find it interesting that he's the character that has a little bit of a connection there. Maybe there's others. And I would also throw in like a piece of like, I don't have a lot of theology on this, but I feel like I've seen some Father Mike Schmidt's videos, you know, that's like issuing a little bit of caution of like, let's not presume that like all the animals and the things that I encounter in my life are like my dead relatives trying to talk to me or like communicating with me or like over spiritualizing all the like phenomena that I see in my life.
Sure.
I don't know how to comment on that specifically, or maybe you get the gist that I'm talking about of like, that it's mainly like an encounter in prayer, not that like my dead relatives are going to animate like maybe the animal, like, you know, that bird that keeps landing that makes
going
me,
to
I don't know.
spiritually shove something. Yeah.
So we could have like Prudence in that regard, and so like him seeing Molly there could be maybe a little bit of like, okay, we could probably critique, I don't know, how do we process all this, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe to go just a slightly different direction, if that's all right. I've been like really interested in this idea of memory that we talked about, and also with the character you just mentioned who worked at the cannery,
Lewis, I believe.
Lewis, his thing was like imagination. He's escaping to his imagination, and I just think it's so interesting to think about like when we're talking about like how the human person is set up, and like philosophy of the human person is like, we've got like an intellect, we've got a will, we've got a memory, we've got an imagination. Those are all different faculties that we have. And that's what's really interesting about this is like we see this faculty of memory within the house, and it's like its job is preserve things at all costs, even if the things aren't true. And like we see this faculty of imagination that runs wild in the house, and it is certainly not true, and it leads to Lewis's death, right? And so it maybe just like a small like philosophical commentary or theological commentary on the importance of integration of all of these things together within the human person. If I only focus on my mind, I'll never be able to do that which is good because I haven't trained my will. If I only do what is willful, I won't do what's good, and I won't know what's good to be able to do it, and all of these different things. So it's interesting to think about like the lack of integration between like the memory and the will and the intellect and the imagination that's present in the game, while we're also looking at this house, which is kind of a model of almost like an individual person, which is like divided off into different sections. And I think what you said about integration, Sister, just made me think about the game in a new way. Like the house is representative of the family. The house is also representative of individuals. And it seems like maybe what the authors of the game are trying to get us to do is realize how important this integration into a kind of common narrative and a useful narrative, while that like is going to be the thing that saves Edith's son, right? This like really, really cohesive unity of what's happened, that she tried to write down everything together for him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
It makes me think of just like, I don't know, the way that people integrate with, like, in the living room, they have a Bible from their great-great-grandfather, and they have a picture of him on the stairwell, and, like, I don't know, just that literal integration of our ancestors into our home and, like, spaces. But it's not like that room is grandpa's, and it's been that way for 4 decades.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of how people integrate that way into their design of their house.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, talking about the house as, like, an image of the family itself, because when you look at, like, the story, the original great-grandfather, like Odin, great-great-grandpa, I don't know, the oldest patriarch of the family, Odin, brought over his old house from Norway when they were traveling.
Which was so weird. Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, he was trying to get away from this family curse and brought the house with him, the creepy giant house. And then the fact that it's shipwrecked, they can still see the ruins of it, and they built the house within sight of the ruins of the old house. And now this new house has, like, started growing and sprawling out, like, in the same way, like it's becoming an image of the old house. It's very interesting that it's like they have this idea that they want to move on or leave things behind, but in practice they're not doing that at all. They're bringing the house with them wherever they go, and that kind of follows them around. And I just found that fascinating, like, from a psychological point of view of, like, you're gonna bring your house, okay, but, like, how important these spaces can become to people, like, that they start placing their identity not in, like, who they are as a person or in their relationships, but in, like, this physical place that becomes more important to them than the relationships in their life or in other, like, deeper parts of their identity. It's fascinating that the house to me is almost like this parasitical kind of character of its own, that it's the setting, but it also is shaping so much of who they are, but then they're the one shaping it. Like, it didn't build itself. So it's very interesting, though, when I think about that scene. I still don't know how to make sense of this, but when Edie is telling the story of the day the tides went out further than they'd ever gone, and that she was able to walk into the sea and go see the house in the fog, and that one, like, at the last second, like, one of the lights in the house turns on, I was just like, what are we even doing right now? Like, what is that? Like, I found that the most, like, haunting, weird part of the whole game, and I don't know how to fit it in with everything else. So if you guys have ideas, but to me that kind of spoke to, like, maybe it's hinting at the fact that, well, either Edie's crazy or that the house, like, there really is something to the house that's a little bit more than just their family's paranoia.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do with that. I was like, what's even happening right now? Is she dead? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my whole experience.
It is a
of
wild
this.
experience, and man, is just the art and the storytelling and all of it beautiful. I mean, like, when you're walking out through the ocean that has the lowest tide in 1,000 years because of an earthquake that took place, and the fog is rolling in, and she's seeing, like, a bed and pieces of her life as she's walking towards this old house. I mean, like, storytelling gold right there. I mean, like, the whole experience just feels so incredible and, like, so nostalgic and so mysterious and odd, and then the light turns on, you're like, what? But yeah, I don't really know what to make sense of it. I feel like the YouTuber that was unpacking that, like, Edie's the murderer, was unpacking somewhere in there that it was like this illumination took place, and maybe then, like, we cut to the scene of, like, they're at the home, and Edith is going back into the library, and she, like, finds the story that's, I mean, like, or that's, like, how it started. It was like them reading the story she's trying to tell. So maybe Edie is trying to tell her confession of how she was actually responsible for all these deaths, and she's trying to bring it to light, but then the mom comes in and is like, no, you're not allowed to know this truth. I don't know if that's any.
It was, that was a very confusing part as well. Yeah.
Well, and they show how, I mean, Dawn is the one who stops that scene. Like, Edie was going to tell us more. She was going to keep going. And then the notebook gets ripped away, and Edith doesn't get the full story. And to me, that also speaks to, like, how our relationships with our family, or the ways that we do and don't communicate clearly with each other, can really have a lasting impact on the way that we're interpreting these stories as well, and, like, how truthful we're being, and how much open-endedness we're leaving to these things. Because the game would not be so obscure if everything went all the way to the end and then, like, okay, and that was that one, moving on. But, like, because it kind of leaves it open, and you're like, what was that light? Now I'm never gonna know. But, like, the whole point was, like, Edith never found out either, and, like, maybe the Edie didn't really know what to make of that either. Like she's trying to help make sense of these experiences that she had, but they never actually really got the chance to communicate with each other. Like they never actually sat down and had a conversation. She communicated that through a book that she snuck to Edith while she was arguing with the mom to keep her distracted. It's so messed up, the communication in this family, that a lot of those questions could have been answered and were not, unfortunately.
Well, I do think that we are getting kind of towards the end of our podcast, and so I was you're welcome to finish your thought, but I was going to kind of move towards, hey, like what's the biggest takeaway for a Christian from this experience of playing this What Remains of Edith Finch game? Like, what, as we've encountered this together, what should we remember? What should we keep in mind? How should this change us? Maybe one thing to consider as we've had our long discussion today about many beautiful facets of this game.
I think for me, I'm at least thinking about bringing one's memories into prayer and one's experiences into prayer. I think that we kind of get a little bit of that, of a little bit of a prayerful walkthrough through Edith's life. And she's trying to like discover who she is, who her family is, and what her story is, and that's like the story of the Jewish people and the covenants, and like trying to discover who I am through like my family ancestry and how God has operated with me. So I feel like I would encourage people to like take time to journal in the way that works for you. I was listening to a video game YouTuber who was talking about, I think it was one of the videos I referenced on Edith Finch, and he was like, we're going to do this walkthrough of Edith Finch as I walk through my life because I don't journal like a normal person. This is how I like journal about my life. And I was like, that's kind of beautiful. Like he was using that medium of art of like exploring video games as his journaling. So whatever works for you, I'd say journal and like process with the Lord in prayer about like your memories and your family and like who you are and how God is revealing himself to you through your memory.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I think for me, reflecting on it as a whole, I think in a lot of ways the video game kind of acts as a cautionary tale. But what I was getting from it was that question of like when to let go and how, and like the importance of hope in our lives, like what life can look like without hope. But if you look at the same game through the eyes of like being Catholic or being Christian, you're going to have a very different perspective on the types of things that happened. And like, there's no loss or death that's bigger than God. Like resurrection is in the future. The dead are not truly gone. They're just not with us anymore. And so that importance of, rather than stewing in our own kind of misery or grief or trying to artificially hold on to stuff that is gone or that has changed, to be open to how God might be inviting us to let go and move forward towards the future with the courage to trust that God has something good there and that he's holding on to our loved ones who are gone even when we can't do it ourselves anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, a little bit of a mixture of the two of you, but just to say that, I have so many experiences on my own and so many ways of trying to understand and make sense of the world. And what's in my mind, I often think about, and I don't know if this is the experience of everyone, maybe this will be a huge confession, right? But I often think that my ideas are so important, and I also think that my ideas are infallible until they're brought out into the light, until they're connected to a community, until they're connected to the Lord. And so I think for me, just like wanting to have integration and really desiring that, like, hey, whatever is going on in your heart or in your life, bring it to the community of faith, and first of all to God, but then also to the community of faith, which can lighten heavy loads that can help bring understanding to places that don't make sense, but also to like share gratitude and joy, which was not something that was shared very often throughout this game. It was like dark until the end, that symbol of the resurrection that we mentioned with Edith's son. And I think maybe just to remember, like, yeah, it's in the end, our lives are all about love, and they're made from love, and they're headed towards love. And that's what that's what's so great about Christianity. So just in the midst of a lot of confusion and a lot of narrative in this game, just remember that, like, yeah, love actually is the point, and we should, like, give kudos to those members of the family who loved well. And Edith's obviously final action was love, right? For her son, to try to give him a shape to his future. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you talk about that love of, like, I feel like there, and in some senses, like, we witness a lack of love going on in this family in a lot of ways, and, like, communion, which is what, like, we're made for, because the Trinity is a communion of love. Sister, we didn't talk today in depth about, like, Memento Mori and how you see that in the episode, and I'm, like, glad that we didn't, because now we can also let people, like, go and read your already really well composed blog post on this. So I'm really glad we explored, like, a lot of other themes. But to give, like, a little thesis, like, could you just say what is Memento Mori, and, like, a brief little note that could lead people to, like, go and check out your blog post, that they could read more in depth about, like, what kind of you're seeing there?
Yeah, so Memento Mori literally translates from Latin to remember your death. And it's like the ancient Christian practice of remembering that life is short and you're going to die. So it's kind of a motivation to live your life well and the time that you have well, not knowing how much time you have, but also looking forward with hope to that future resurrection of knowing what happens after death and making our decisions here and now in light of eternity, and how you want to live with God in the future. So I feel like in this game, you see a lot in between Edie and Dawn, especially, like, two opposite sides of the spectrum of, like, wanting to stay in the past and hold on to those loved ones in a way that might be a little bit too much, versus, like, wanting to leave it all behind and, like, race forward towards the future. And then I kind of talk about the way that maybe Edith Finch kind of finds the balance between those two extreme perspectives to a more healthy view of what we as Catholics would understand as, like, the practice of Memento Mori.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that. And go check out the blog post linked down below that Sister Allison has written, folks, on that piece. A final note that I wanted to throw in there, too, is also... I was kind of, like, I think bemoaning, it's like some of the issues in, like, the game industry and film and just all media, but, like, about, like, you know, a lot of immoral content can be, like, present in our video games, and they can be so long that they can be so difficult to consume. And that's also a book problem too. Like, please, a call to also other good Christian and Catholic gamers, or gamers just want to make good content. Please make some excellent games like Edith Finch. We need short, digestible, beautiful stories that, like, are good. And Steam gave this game, like, overwhelmingly positive reviews. So if you're upset by the game industry and see improvements, please, I think, throwing out an invitation for people to take your love for video games and to make more beautiful stories and things that do reflect the Catholic worldview.
Yeah, we totally agree.
So,
and even if you can't make a video game yourself, pray for people who do, because God's grace can do a lot of good in that industry too, and he needs to be invited in.
That's absolutely true. Great
Amen.
point.
Any other final comments from folks on any pieces on Edith Finch, gaming, or the like?
Not for me.
I just wanted to say that, like, my grandma took me to a cemetery the other day. I was visiting my family, and she was telling me the stories of, like, her great-great-grandparents who were born in, like, the 1850s and all this. And I was like, oh, this is so perfect preparation for talking about this game. But, like, to me, it wasn't something that was, like, very depressing or, like, oppressive, but it was a beautiful experience of sharing the stories and the love for family members who had gone before, and just that hope in the resurrection. So I just want to say that, like, if anyone is listening who is struggling with the loss of a loved one, whether that's recent or a long time ago, to know of our prayers for you, and just hoping that you can find encouragement in Christ in that future hope of the resurrection and still feel close to them however you're living today and until you meet them again.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you make me think, I hope that I didn't speak in an improper way when I was talking about, like, this home being, like, a really unhealthy memorialization of those who have died. That like, certainly was no critique against memorializing the dead. Like, certainly, like, we in our homes and in our lives should, like, memorialize, like, our ancestors before, just in, like, a healthy, integrated way, I think, which you've already unpacked well.
Their lives have been a blessing to us, and the example of their lives continued to be a blessing to us. So...
Yeah. Well, Sister, I know that we began prayer on our end. Would you be able to close us out on the other bookend of our podcast with prayer?
Sure. maybe we could say an eternal rest just because of all of the death that we've been talking about. Praying for all of our deceased loved ones, those who have gone before us, and for anyone who's died under tragic circumstances especially. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us, Sister.
Thanks. It's been awesome.
For every work of art we talk about in this podcast, we also have prayerful guided meditations available based on that work of art in the Mystic Moments playlist. We invite you to join us for prayer. Also, a like, subscribe, a positive review, and especially supporting us on Patreon helps us dedicate more time to this ministry. Please send this episode to anyone you think might appreciate it. God bless.